Recording in progress.
Okay, welcome to the Village of Buchanan, December 20th, 2022 workshop meeting. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So on our discussion list on our agenda this evening, update on the AMS project. And this is the project behind the hardware store on 9A, the apartment project.
Yeah, Dave Smith, village planner is in the audience. Oh, he's right over there. Yep. So Dave will cut us through, give you an update of the discussions we've had with AMS and answer any questions from the village board.
Okay, good evening there, members of the board. So since the last time this board met, I think you had a presentation from the applicant on the AMS project. It was kind of the direction to go back and review the petition that they are contemplating. They prepared one that was submitted and was reviewed by the village attorney and by our office. And essentially what they are proposing from a zoning standpoint, in your code, in the applying the overlay district, the C1, C2, you have uses permitted by right, which include 1 and 2 family, multi-family apartments on dwellings not less than 20,000 square feet. And it includes a mixed use of commercial component. Then you have uses permitted by special permit of the planning board, and it's 1 and 2 family, multi-family apartments. Land not less than 20,000 square feet, with a maximum of 12 dwelling units per 40,000 square feet prorated. You also have multi-family 1 and 2 bedroom townhouse dwelling units or 2 family dwellings, parcels not less than 20,000 square feet, with a maximum development of 6 dwelling units per 40,000 square feet. So under your existing zoning, the AMS proposal doesn't fit under any of those categories. So they need to come up with proposed zoning language. So they had initially proposed that the 1 and 2 bedroom multifamily apartment dwellings on parcels of land not less than 5 acres. And I'm summarizing here, with a maximum of 28 units per 40,000 square feet. In my first reaction to that is that's a fairly substantial increase in density, or request for an increase in density. And so that perhaps it would be because of that increase, because of the village board's role in adopting legislation, that the village board may actually take the special permit approval process because of the increase in density as part of the special permit. So that was the kind of the first round of discussion with the AMS team. The next question that came up was, all right, after, and they were amenable to having the village board granting the special permit for that particular, because of that, the density increase. The question came up afterwards, and this is really where we're looking to get some input from your board, that the next step is to send an application, in these other instances, send the application to the planning board for site plan. What the applicant suggests is, because of the ongoing effort that's being considered, that the village board would be granted a special permit, that they could also grant the site plan approval as part of that process. And it eliminates a step of going to the planning board for a formal approval. But the planning board could still be involved with a referral, and they would review it and provide recommendations back to the village board. So procedurally, it's one of the issues that I wanted to bring up with you and discuss to get your direction. The AMS team has a representative here, who's listening, is to get some feel from your board if you're comfortable with the granting of the special permit for the increased density. And then if you also feel comfortable with granting the site plan approval for that application. with a review and referral to the planning board. Now, this is not an unusual example. There are other communities where the village board has both a special permit and site plan approval process. In fact, I just went through this in the village of Portchester for the development of the former United Hospital property, where the village board went through the environmental review, they granted the special permit, and they also granted site plan approval. And as part of that process, they referred it to the planning commission for review. So I think that provides a very quick summary of where we are in the process. The applicant has their petition ready to submit. They have the conceptual plans and the other documentation that's necessary to start the process. But I think we'll collectively want to get some input from your board before there's a formal submission. So I'd be happy to answer any questions you have.
The only concern or question I would have is that the planning board has been trained and, you know, they understand, you know, so they have certain training they have to do. So they would be best to go in front of. And I'm not saying anything negative about our board. So just like, let me put that out there, but you know, we have a fairly new board. I mean, Sean has been the planning board chairman, so he has extensive, experience with site plans, et cetera, in the process. I just, you know, my only concern would be, the site plan. You know, this board hasn't done a site plan, seeker review. You know, there's different, Dave, I'm not telling you anything. But, there's different steps in the process and, they really haven't had the experience with that.
And again, I think that's, certainly I need direction from you as the governing body as to how you would like to proceed with that process.
I just don't see how we could grant a special permit for something that's not in the code.
Well,
This special permit was created over 1 year of deliberation between the zoning board, the planning board, and the village board. That's what developed this overlay in order to allow developers greater flexibility to increase the density while still protecting the taxpayer by having as of right use for 50% commercial to help offset that. Also, by adding a special permit criteria for this increased density, I don't see how you can't classify that as a type 1 action. We couldn't even entertain it without a seeker. And our codes specifically state what we're supposed to do for type 1 seekers. And so maybe you could enlighten me, because I don't see how the village board could just say, today we're going to issue a special permit for 28 units for 40,000 square feet.
that's
Without having a zoning change.
correct. The petition that the applicant would be submitting would include a zoning change that would allow for the use that they've been discussing with the village. So that's kind of the part of the first step, as part of this process, that the zoning text amendment would need to be submitted for review. The process would include, it needs to include seeker. So seeker is not being excluded here. We haven't made a determination of whether this is a type 1 or unlisted action. That would come as part of the submission materials. So seeker would still need to be followed. So while the village has gone through a deliberative process to create either by permitted use, permitted by right, or by special permit, this is the same process that you're going through. You would have a zoning text amendment that would allow for a use that's contemplated and is discussed by AMS.
And also, our codes specifically state what we're supposed to do for seekers, what happens when there's a type 1 action. I know New York State will allow, and there has been decisions and judgments over the years on who could supersede who when doing planning or functions of a planning board. However, our code specifically states that when these types of actions take place, that the application is to go to the planning board, and the planning board is to render an opinion. If they don't render that opinion within 45 days, the village board makes that determination. And all throughout our code, it states specifically in here that the planning board is responsible for site plan review for type 1 action. I still believe this is a type 1 action specifically because of the density. Can you tell me why you believe that this type of change or this type of development would not be a type 1 action?
The type 1 action or the determination of the type of action gets revealed when an environmental assessment form is submitted and reviewed as part of the application, and we're just not there yet.
Well, don't you feel that this type of investigation should have taken place before we are requested to make these kinds of opinions? There's no way we could make these kinds of,
This is the way the process works.
well, the process should follow our code. Our code specifically states what process is supposed to take place.
Yeah, a petition for zoning may be made by an applicant, property owner, contract entities. And it's upon that, that the village board would act, whether they want to entertain the motion or not.
Okay, so our code says, application for special permit pursuant to these regulations shall be upon forms prescribed by the planning board and shall contain the following information unless specifically waived by the approval authority. Our code right now, the approval authority is the planning board.
Right, and the code can be amended
Okay,
to
so,
allow for the village board to, in this specific instance, to approve a site plan.
so right now, we're gonna petition to change the permitted uses of our table of bulk regulations, right? And we're also gonna change Article 10, Section 21142. And we're gonna have to change many sections of our code to allow the applicant to circumvent the process that we've had for many years.
Well, that's part of the discussion we're having up here, and I don't think that anybody's circumventing the process. I think as part of the discussion, we indicated that the planning board would have a role in this process. Now, what that role is, whether they grant the site plan or whether we're doing a review and recommendation, is a deliberative process that we need to have input from your board.
Well, our roles are clearly defined within our code. I know that New York State law allows for certain things. And New York State has allowed us to use our code. Whenever we write a rule that's more restrictive than New York State law, we have to submit it to the state for approval. So wherever in our codes, it says planning board approval, planning board review, planning board anything, we would have to have that change. And the interpretation, we can grant a blanket waiver, it just flies in the face of following the law.
I don't think anybody's suggesting that a blanket waiver.
I did read a memo that said we could do something similar to that, and I don't think that that's correct. So
Well,
I just like to put that to bed there.
Teresa,
Also,
when
as
the
the
app-
mayor,
you want the applicants?
as the mayor had said, the planning board is, we have many members on the planning board. They've been appointed throughout different, I think I only have one person on there that I have appointed. They are required to attend training. They have had applicants before them. They have listened to consultants. They have listened to the attorneys for different site plans. They are much better suited and have more resources to entertain this type of issue. And as I said, these 3 paragraphs took over a year and a half to put in there. And on top of this, we're gonna have another special use, which was postulated to be a whole nother section of the overlay district. We're gonna have 3 different rules that govern a C1 and C2 zone. It's, to me, that's ludicrous. And if we allow 28 units per 40,000 square feet just in that parcel, people have to realize that's for the entire overlay district. That's for every undeveloped piece of land in the C1, C2 overlay.
No, that's not correct.
If you're gonna put it in
That's
a
not
permitted,
correct. That is
okay,
not correct.
okay, so how is it not correct?
Because the property, the way that the language is written is that the parcels of land may not be less than 5 acres. So there is already a filter on the number of properties that this could be
And
applied.
how many properties does it apply to?
I don't
One?
know. I don't know.
So then somebody could say this is spot zoning for something with the biggest lot. Right?
That
And down the- down the
that's-
road-
That's an issue that the applicant will have to address as part of the deliberations for the rezoning.
Be my guest, sir. I'm sorry.
Yes, sir, you may speak.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board.
Commissioner, the mic is on. Just to be on the safe side.
That's it.
You can pull it out.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board, Mark Weingart on behalf of AMS on this project we're discussing. Maybe we just step back a little bit and have a conversation on how we got to where we are, because I think it's getting a little confused. First, on the issue of the special permit and the zoning request. For this project, the first thing we need to do, because it is not a permitted project to go forward under the current zone, is to request a zone change. We can do that in many different ways. We could ask you to create a new zone, or we could work within the zoning that's there and try to make changes to it to work for the project that we were proposing. It was suggested that there was a zone that had been recently created that we were not far off from, and that there were things that we can do to work within that zone, and that's what we did. So our proposal, which we've shown you, and we hope is one that has the majority of people to think it's a good idea, at least to going through and taking a look at whether this is a good idea for Buchanan. We start out and talk about how do we go ahead and change that zone, and I think your planner, Mr. Smith, is very good at what he does, gave an explanation that you don't have the language in front of you, but we went through a few things. One was, how do we get into the zone? We have this overlay, it works. What were the constraints or the concerns about why it might work? We went through it with you and showed you that if in fact we had the commercial element on top of this, and I'll talk about the specific constraints of this site, we had no room left to build the residential that we needed to build because of the steep slopes that were there. We had all of these various constraints that we were working through. So what we had suggested was, because of the uniqueness of this property, and when I say unique, it's because the vast majority of our frontage does have commercial on it. It's just not our frontage. It's between us and Post Road. It's the hardware store. And the problem is the unique shape of this property, where our property goes behind commercial and goes through. That commercial would have been fine if it was part of us. We even had conversations with that neighbor who wanted to continue their hardware store there. And that was one of the constraints that we dealt with. So rather than doing way too much in the way of disturbance of steep slopes, so rather than putting in commercial that, in my opinion, in that area is really not necessary, what was more important with the apartments, with the people, the income, and the things that we talked about doing, it was our suggestion to stay with the current zoning, create the special permit. We were all fine with that. The only issue that came up at this point on this particular issue was who would have the jurisdiction to make the determination. We already know that the zone change is yours. The code is yours. It's your jurisdiction. We have to start with you. We also know that for seeker, and I think we are confusing, we'll go back through it, whether it's a negative deck or a positive deck, you always have to do seeker. Seeker will be attached to the threshold action, which is the zoning and the change of zoning. And that is, and normally would be you, because if you're making the determination on that, the village board is the one who will likely act as lead agency on the seeker process. That's how it normally is done. You could put it in another board if you waive it, decide to send it to somebody else. But in most jurisdictions, the threshold decision being, do I change the zoning code? Seeker is done by that board in context of that decision. So starting from that premise, now the question was, if we did it in C1, we needed a special permit. It wasn't a permitted use, it was a specially permitted use. And one of the reasons for using specially permitted uses is to create conditions so it doesn't happen within everywhere, but only in certain limited places where it should apply. That's why you use special permits, to create new conditions. For example, one that was discussed was more than 5 acres, because you didn't want this kind of density on small properties, you wanted it on large properties, and that's why we went through that. So when we were talking about that, we then said, okay, great, we're going to be in front of the village board, we're going to hopefully get our zone changed and finish our seeker review. Now what's next? We need to get a special permit, and we need to get a site plan approval. All we had said was, we were okay if the special permit and the site plan were both in the planning board. We don't have an issue with that, it's legal. Mr. Smith and your counsel brought up the fact that because the special permit is where this extra density was being granted, that you might want to keep that in yourself. What we were objecting to or having a concern about was if we came to you for the zoning, and then we had to go through another process with you for the special permit, and then go to the planning board for site plan, it would take more than a year. It would take a long time. So our suggestion was do the zoning up front, invest the special permit and the site plan in one board. Do it either in your village board or in your planning board, so you don't have to go to both. When it was determined, or we were told that it was suggested that the village board might want to continue, have its jurisdiction over the special permit, our answer was fine. Let's also put the site plan in there as well, with also understanding that you do have uniquely trained and people at the planning board, and you want them part of the process. It would be referred to them, both of them would be referred to them for their report and recommendation. The only difference being they're not holding public hearings and making the ultimate decision. And they would come back to you with a memo in a particular amount of time that said, here's our opinion, and this is what we think you ought to do, but you're the ultimate decision maker. I will tell you as an example, David gave one, but in Greenberg, the town of Greenberg, if you look at their code, on any property that's more than 5 acres, site plan is vested in the town board. It's required to go to the planning board for their opinion, but it's of such an importance in nature of the size of the project that they don't want to give up their jurisdiction over that determination, which is how some of this, at least from our side, was considered and why we drafted it the way we drafted it. So just in sum on that, before we talk about the seeker issues that were brought up, we were trying to avoid a 3-step process. We'd like to have a 2-step process. It will save us some months. And with what goes on in the market, all the things with interest rates, and with people having carrying costs, we'd like to have there be some level of sensitivity to the fact that this is going to be a long process. We just don't want to make it any longer.
So what type of time frame are you looking at?
I don't know that you'll be.
Well,
told that-
you said 1 year is not enough.
You're gonna
Too much.
you're gonna transition now to the second point of the question, because the second part of the question is seeker, which I heard you discussing a few moments ago. And the biggest issue for timing on this will be whether there's a positive declaration or a negative declaration, and if we're required to do an environmental impact statement. Number one, I can tell you, if we know up front, we'd like to know up front. My client may very well decide not to go forward if it requires an environmental impact statement, because that probably is an 18-month process by the time we're finished. And the likelihood is they won't be interested. Now, as far as the law is concerned, you are correct. This is very possibly a type 1 action. I haven't looked at it yet, where I haven't seen the final EAF, but it may very well be. But I can also tell you is that's not the end of the discussion. The end of the discussion is the determination of whether or not there is an impact that will not be, that is of a significant nature that requires the discussion and the study. I can tell you right now, for example, I'm building projects down in White Plains, as an example, hundreds of thousands of square feet that are done on negative declarations. The state law does not require it. There is an inference created if you're a type 1 action. And that inference says, we think it may very well need an environmental impact statement. I'll look at it carefully. And if you don't think it has reached the level of having a significant impact requiring study, then state your reasons for it, and you can still do a negative declaration. And frankly, that is the way it is handled most of the time. But the fact we're a type 1 action doesn't mean anything. It just means what your level of thought process is in determining if in fact you are the lead agency, whether an environmental impact statement is required. Personally, I don't think so. I don't think it's required. It's on a main road. You're not going to, there's not going to be major traffic impacts, etc. I don't believe it rises to that level. That's something we'll have to convince you as a lead agency. But if you're talking about timing and you're talking about with a negative declaration and all of this, we certainly plan on being able to do it in less than a year and be in the ground by next year. That's the hope.
Well, one of the things with the type 1 with our code, we have specific things we're supposed to look for when we do the when we look at the criteria. Okay, and right now our code, I don't even think we meet some of the criteria. It says evidence that the proposed use is consistent and compatible with the goals of the village master plan. Obviously, it's not. cost benefit analysis similar to review estimated municipal cost services and prospective revenues, which would be generated by proposed use. There's a whole list of things that our planning board, based on our codes, are for type one.
Well, that's correct, and if it's not, and if we vest this in the village board, if that is the desire of the board, to invest it, we would have to make that same level of proof to this board as we would to the planning board, and that would be our job to do that. If you don't think we've reached it, then you won't approve us. But that will be our job, and I think I'm very confident that we'll be able to make that level of proof. So that, we're not afraid of that. We just want to get started. So the process is, we can't get started until we know what to put into the language in the code for the procedure. And you are correct. We are going to be changing provisions in your code that are going to enable us to be able to bring this project forward. We may object to some of them. We may not like them, but we are going to be making changes to that, to your code. Or at least we're going to be requesting those.
Oh, yeah. What do any of the other board members think? I hate monopolizing the time.
You're so good at it.
Sorry.
Okay. Well, I've said from the beginning that I'm willing to work with, on behalf of the board, with these gentlemen and trying to push this project forward. I think it's a win-win for them, for us. And it's, it's time to move the village forward. That's my.
You see, the issue I have with statements like that is prejudicial, because you're showing a preference to the applicant based on a theory and not based on fact.
That's your.
I wouldn't be giving somebody else's. I always give my own opinion. And when somebody says, thanks for coming here, I'm gonna push it forward, that's not even reviewing any of the data.
No, that's just unfair. I'm sorry. Else is not here. That's just not even legally, factually correct. There's a process here that's going to take many, many months. And all I heard was, sounds like a good idea. Come show it to me. There's going to be months of presentations and information and things and studies that are going to be provided. And there's no vote that's being taken now. Nobody is violating any process or any procedure or any law by making comments that we think this is a good idea to move forward. That's just
And
wrong.
that's what I said. I said, I think it's a good idea to move forward.
So, David, the zone text amendment has to come to our board, correct?
Correct.
What's the next step after that? We go from there, seeker is then initiated,
Correct.
which we then determine whether it's a negative or positive thing,
Okay.
correct?
Correct. Yes, and there will be.
Can I just step you back?
Sure.
Yes, if you decide to be the lead agency, which is likely, you will have to make a determination of intent to be lead agency. There's a 30-day period when it's sent out to all the other potential agencies where somebody makes a determination. You're the most likely.
But my question is, regardless of who determines, if we determine we're lead agent or not, the zone text amendment has to come before our board. Is that correct?
That's correct.
If someone else was the lead agency, the environmental review process would go
Correct.
before them, and it would still come back to you. Nobody changes your zoning code without your permission.
Our code right now says this application goes to the planning board. They review the information along with a seeker for a text amendment. They send their recommendations to us. We say, yes, we're gonna amend all the pages of our code and amend our special use permit. We say, yes, this is a good use. You guys can now go forward with it. And they do the whole review process. Then they would be the determining factor on the site plan. Maybe the maximum use doesn't fit what they can do. So a permitted use is not the same as a special use permit. We can give them what they're asking for, 28 for 40,000. Right, 28 for 40,000?
That's correct.
That's what the maximum could be. The planning board might say, there's no way you can make that work. It's gonna be too much of an impact on this, that, or the other thing, and they could grant them 20. We would be out of the loop on that. The planning board would have the authority to give them the maximum use of the special permit that the code was changed to.
That's correct how it reads now, but if
Yeah.
the changes are made that we see, that would not be. the
That's
planning board's
correct. I'm
decision,
saying that's-
It would be your decision.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
And again, that's where the discussion of tonight is, that it needs to be one or the other. And we need to know what this board wants to do so we can submit in context of what you're saying. And trustee Murray is accurate that we would have to make changes to your code. We will be proposing those if you decide that that's the jurisdiction you're going for. And again, it is not unusual for large projects for that to occur, that there are exceptions made throughout Westchester County. But virtually, again, Greenberg being an example, Portchester being another example, where virtually all of the projects go to the planning board, with the exception of certain projects because of their size and importance that are vested in the legislative authority.
Does anybody know within the village of Buchanan how many times the village board has done that? Has it ever occurred?
Have we ever done a project this size?
There's been plenty
Has
of
our
projects
planning
that-
boards have ever looked at a project this size?
Yes, we have.
Really?
Yes, we have. Down.
How many units?
How many units was the affordable house? 90 units?
it
was
built?
the No, it was rejected. They couldn't get funding, but it was approved.
Wasn't good.
Yes, it was.
Nothing has been finalized in this board
I'm
or,
just asking
I'm just
when-
telling, I know the fact.
when this process took place, when the village board took the power away from the planning board.
Well,
And-
I am excited about your project and I would like to move forward with you. The petition of change the zone text amendment. And I would like the rest of the board to comment as well.
Well, obviously-
I already commented.
Well, given the zone text amendment that has to rely, has to live within our board and the complexity of the project, I would like to see the village board be the lead agent. That's my opinion. With the input, of course, of the planning board.
Well, what kind of input from the planning board? Follow what the code says, because if the planning board doesn't approve it, we can't approve it either.
They can review it, and they can give me
Input.
their opinion, exactly.
Well, obviously, I'm against it. I like the process we've had. I think our code has worked well for us over the years. This change of more than 100% increase on population density without the commercial aspect, without having the financial impact to our tax base, without having the commercial aspect, I think that that's to the village. There isn't one community in the United States that is profitable on purely residential. Our village was 43% commercial or industrial, and that's what created our tax base.
We could discuss that for a long period of time.
I know it.
I'd like to make just one point. Your code came because those boards before you created that code, and you have the right to change it, and it's been changed, I would assume, regularly in order to meet the changing world that we live in. But, with all due respect, to you, I do this in just virtually every municipality in Westchester County. I've been doing this for a lot of years. I don't think there's a lawyer who's done more projects than I have in the last 30 years. So I go in and I learn and I've been part of them. And I've been part of lots of them with, your professionals and with others. And I can tell you that you're going nowhere in communities like this if you don't create the residential base. The commercial base in the days when you would bring in large companies and corporations that came to your place and took out their own corporate office park and built their office park, and they came in with all their employees who bought the homes and created the market. It doesn't exist anymore. And if you look all throughout Westchester County in the last 10, 15 years, the municipalities that are succeeding are those that have understood that life has changed, that there is a need for rental housing, particularly with the change of the younger people in this area that have now said, not all so quick to buy houses as quickly as others did. They delay it, they get married later. And we also have a lot of empty nesters, fortunately, who are not just looking to retire to some other community and leave. Many of them want to also be here at least for portions of the year and are looking to downsize and sell their home, and they're in transition and say, I'd rather be in the park. You don't have that kind of luxury rental product here. You need it. You need those people. You need to attract them. This project won't be enough by itself. You're going to need more units. That is when commercial will follow you in. That's what's happening in the other municipalities elsewhere. It's my opinion, just like you have
No, I
yours,
got you.
but that's how I feel.
Absolutely.
Go, just look at Harrison and Mamaroneck, prime example.
Well, there you go. We're the ones who,
I see it all day
I
long.
worked for 15 years on that train station project in Harrison.
Yep.
And as David is well aware, and that came up, and that's gonna change the whole face of the downtown.
That's a
That's what
monstrosity.
changes it. And that place,
It's humongous.
well, it's not that, but that area there that was struggling so badly. Now, all of a sudden, those restaurants, those other, they're not just profit, because the people are now just moving in, they came into the first building, they're about to all come into the second building. Those 140 apartments that they have there, that's the lifeblood, that's what's gonna make that community come back and prosper.
And you're right, the code does change a lot. The overlay district code you're talking about was revised last year. And it went for over many public hearings and many inputs from many different people. And that was what was felt was the best maximum density. And we gave a lot of different things with that too. The lot coverages, the setbacks, a lot of things.
And you can wait to see if others come to use that code to build the product that you're looking for. Or you can realize that you have somebody here who's now working on something, not myself, but my client here. That's out there with about 4,000 units of housing proposed in Westchester County. And is somebody who's an organization who's able to deliver on their promises and says, this is what I need in order to build here. You don't have to say yes. But if you do, they're gonna get it done for you. So you have to make a determination if they think that's what the market reflects, if that's something that you think is good for your community.
So would the board like to discuss it further in exec session, or are we ready to?
I think we know where we all stand.
So I understand that the board is interested, the majority of the board is interested in becoming the lead agency. Is that correct?
Correct.
Correct. Yes. So just to make sure that we're all straight on, because I have two terms out there, and this is, we're going to come in with a petition that's going to vest the authority of the special permit and the site plan in the village board with referral to the planning board. And we will do that. We will have that in the book, and we will hope to start the process in this way as the first.
If I'm not mistaken, that being designated lead agent, the lead agent determines who gets sent what, correct?
No, lead agency.
Lead agency is
The
the
lead
approval.
agency is just under seeker.
Yeah.
It would be who would be the environmental review, and what I'm hearing here, because is that you're gonna say intent to be lead, when we give you the application and you get it, you're gonna declare your intent to be lead agency. Even if somebody challenged you, you are, because of the threshold determination, the appropriate lead agency, so you will be the lead agency for environmental review purposes. That's separate and different from who has the ultimate voting authority, the approval authority, the zone code, which is you, and now it would be the special permit, which is you, and the site plan, which is you.
That's everything.
Yes, absolutely. Right.
The whole
But again,
OS?
so it's clear, the planning board will receive all of these things for their report and recommendation.
Only the lead agent requests it. That's what,
Not the way we're writing the code.
Okay.
It's a
you gotta-
mandatory referral.
okay.
So we'll be interested in seeing that, and thank you, Mr. Weingarten, for coming in this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay, Dave, you're still on the hot seat.
Okay.
So an update from you regarding site lot coverage.
Thank you, Mayor. So our office, based on direction from the board, prepared a technical memo dated November 29th, 2022 on lot coverage review. The issue was that the village had been entertaining or had entertained application before the zoning board for lot coverage for specific lots, and the proposals were in excess of the lot coverage requirements currently in the code. And so the issue was to go out and evaluate, do a community survey of what other communities have for lot coverage. And lot coverage is defined in a couple of different ways. One, communities will have a lot coverage requirement for buildings, building coverage, which, the village of Buchanan does not have. Or they'll do maximum lot coverage, and in your code, the maximum lot coverage is defined as, and if you don't mind, I'm sure the definition so that we're all on the same page, but the proportion of all ground floor areas and structures upon a lot, to the total area of the lot expressed as a percentage ground floor areas shall be measured by taking the outside dimensions of the ground level of all accessory and principal buildings, including porches, carports, garages, and sheds. Structures for the purposes of lot coverage shall include swimming pools, paved walkways, and whether constructed of pervious materials or not, patios, decks, and driveways and parking areas. So that's how the village defines lot coverage. And part of the issue is that as people want to enjoy their homes and their properties, they may want to add a pool or a porch or maybe an addition to their house. And so they're finding that there may be this issue that the lot coverage for the different zones may not allow it. And so this is part of the discussion that we want to have as your village. So as part of this, we reached out to the building department, the village attorney, the chairman of your zoning board, to get some input as to what they have been experienced recently. And for the most part, there have been some applications that are just over the prescribed limit. 30% is the coverage, and I think there was a precedent that was 33.9%, so that's kind of where things fall. There were, I guess, a couple of applications that were in the 40 to 45% that were denied. The planning board chairman, the zoning board chairman, excuse me, indicated that he thought that a 40% coverage would be a reasonable based on his experience in dealing with those applications, and he has a long-standing commitment as a public servant in the community, so I think he understands it has a temperature and gauge as to what might be acceptable.
That was the planning board, you said?
Zoning board. My apologies, zoning board. So as part of the survey, we looked at 11 different communities, and they're included in the table as part of the submission. And not surprisingly, the numbers are all over the place because every community in Westchester County is different. They have different priorities. There are some communities that have significantly less coverage requirements, and there are others that allow for more coverage. And so, while there's no consistent theme, I think that part of this evaluation, looking at the different communities, is that each community wants to decide what's best for itself. And I think there are a number of examples where the maximum lot coverage is at this 40 to 50% range for different lot sizes. And typically the larger lots have a smaller percentage of coverage. And then as you get to the smaller lot, the percentage goes up because you have less room. So I think the examples that we've provided give you some examples of how you could apply that. I think the 40% that was recommended by the zoning board chair certainly fits in with kind of the community survey that we've undertaken. Part of this process, we need to get input from you as a board. Again, we just had this discussion about zoning text amendments. These would be zoning text amendments that are in your purview. So we would need to have some direction, and then we could provide a kind of a red line format for the text changes, and that would be something that you would review. You would refer it to the planning board or others to be involved. There's a secret process as well. We prepare environmental assessment form, and so there would be a public hearing as part of this process. So I think that provides a fairly quick overview of the work that's been done, the examples that have been provided, that we provide you as a board with some guidance as to, if you so chose, how to revise your zone.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you for the update and the work on that.
Okay.
So the board will have to make a decision on what they want to do. If they want to go further, we have to set up a public hearing. I'd like to know better exactly how many applicants were. Did you have that information, like how many applicants went to the 40% over the last, say, 5 years?
Relatively few. That was kind of a general statement. I'd have to rely on the minutes from the zoning board meetings or applications.
One of the reasons why, and that's not encapsulated in the data, one of the reasons why the zoning board chairman might have had a gut feeling with that, because I know when I was a planning board chairman, when I was the mayor, when he was the zoning board chairman, people come up to you in all aspects, whether you're at a seniors luncheon, a veterans thing, they come up to you and ask, can I do this? Can I do that? And you usually get back to them and say, this is what the code says, you can go for a variance, and to take this many months, you can go for that. So as people educate themselves on the process, they might not come for the whole review process because they're afraid that they might not get the changes that they want. So they'll scale back their plans, or they might even abandon their plan. So although the data will show through the planning board, the zoning board minutes, how many people looked for it and how many people were denied, it doesn't take into account the ancillary contacts that all the other appointed or elected officials have, as well as the building inspector. Somebody might come in and ask the building inspector, can you tell me what code I have to look in? I know that was one of the reasons why we put the code on the computer, so people could look it up themselves, instead of having to invest in an architect, instead of having to invest in a consultant, instead of going through the process of expending funds and then coming out with nothing. So, there has been talk about this for many years. There, people with swimming pools, driveways, all kinds of things. There's debates on what an impervious surface is. Can I put down crushed stone? Is that count as an impervious surface? So there's not any good fixed data. There's a lot of ancillary data also that I think should be taken into consideration.
To have a conversation with Gary and our building inspector. That's a good point. And my only point with this whole thing is, you know what, we're a small community here. The last vestiges of the small town USA. And my concern was that we didn't start looking like the Bronx. I took heat over that. And I'm not anything against the Bronx people. A lot of people moved up here, a lot of good people from the Bronx. But it's what the vision is for the future. What do you want your community to look like? Do you want houses on top of one another? Do you want the lot completely covered? Do you want some grassy areas, some tree areas? So it's like, what is the vision of the board? I could go up to 40%, and that's a big jump. But what I'm concerned about now is that difference, that 3.9%. So now, if we say that it's 40%, does that mean now they can go to the zoning board and now it's 44% or 43.9%? So that's my only concern. Is it going to be the 40%? There's no leeway, or so that's got to kind of be worked out. Because now you're at 44%. Might as well go to 50%. You know what I'm saying? Where do you stop? Where do you stop?
Right. Well, what we could do is we could set the parameters for the seeker. I know what the biggest issue would be drainage and how it would affect your neighbors.
Yeah. Correct.
So we could put in some kind of text to say anything over 30% will require verification of no detrimental impact to your neighbors. And you can set up a list of criteria how you think there might be an impact. I know there were people there were some houses on Henry Street that had some issues with the slopes, and our steep slopes law will take care of that now. But we could set a threshold where people can go up to 40%. I've always felt that people should be able to use their property as they see fit, as long as they don't impact their neighborhood. And increasing the lot coverage will increase the people's ability to use their property, will increase their property values, and consequently increase the tax base. So I would be definitely inclined to go to 40%. as long as a formal review process is set up, so that there's no deleterious effects to the adjoining property,
100%.
you know?
That's a conversation Mr. Cook and I had earlier today about that very issue, because one of the impacts of additional impervious surfaces is runoff. And to make sure that it's mitigated to the maximum extent practicable. And obviously, you don't want to have impacts on your neighbors. I think that's not an unreasonable request to include as part of the.
And one of the reasons why you had the 33%, it was like considered de minimis,
Right.
you know, and you're cutting, you know, we were telling people you gotta take out this many pavers, or you had to put in one extra bush, or take this curb out. Because some of the smaller lots, it was actually smaller. Now, a percentage is obviously bigger on bigger lots, you know? So I know there was a push to do prorated stuff, but I'm big on fairness, you know? 40% for this guy means 40% for that guy. You know, so I'm inclined to entertain it. We could have a resolution set for the next meeting for a public hearing and see what the public has to say about it. We can leave the public hearing open for 2 months, because we're gonna need a seeker. I'm sure this isn't gonna be a type 1 action, right? We're just gonna need basically.
Yeah, we're talking about a short form.
Yeah.
Yeah. Procedurally, what I would suggest is that we could put together the proposed text amendments in red line format with the environmental assessment form submitted to your board, and then you could formally start the process of.
Okay,
So
but
the public hearing.
if we can get that by the next village board meeting, we can schedule the public hearing. We can leave it open for as long as we want and have the documents ready for review.
When's your next meeting?
January 3rd.
No problem.
So do you guys think that that's a good idea? So we could ask Stephanie to set up a resolution for a public hearing, which the
Are
public
the
hearing
rest
will
of
be a
us,
month after that.
are the rest of us, on board with this? Or is it just Teresa and Sean?
Oh, it doesn't-
it sounds like it's Chris and Sean at this point.
Okay,
Okay.
so then.
Yeah,
That's cool.
that's
Let's
fine.
do
If
it.
you wanna, if you.
Fine with it, but I mean, it seems like you guys are the only ones that are, commenting, so that's fine.
But you have every opportunity to comment on it.
We don't get much time though.
No.
Okay, so what would you like to comment?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, good.
I think it's a great idea
do
to
I.
make it 40%, because I believe that if you make the text and show that there's certain variations of the, maybe you just keep it first floor level, nothing above first floor level, you're expanding. The language you put in there is how you're gonna base it. And that's pretty much, like Sean said, that we would put language in there to show what we have for our specs for using that 40% or to go to 43%. I'm good with either, to be honest with you. I believe it's your property. You should utilize it the way you want to utilize it.
Well, then do you wanna go to 50%?
I'm fine with that as
75%?
well. I'll go to 75%. I love the Bronx. I'm there every day.
I'm not saying anything bad about the Bronx, but people come here. There's different, it's a different setting here. That's why people are coming here. That's all I'm saying. It's my opinion. That's all. Dan, what would you like to say?
No, it's just, I'm perfectly fine with it.
Okay,
I thought it
Steve,
was always too low to begin.
any comments?
No, we can move forward.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dave, for that information. And now we're gonna move right along to the accessory apartment in single family residence detached. Who would like to comment on that? Dave, do you have any information on that? The accessory apartment? Okay, all right.
There was some back and forth, which I reviewed briefly with Marcus. I can't think of comments.
Because we had a joint board meeting with the village board, the zoning board and the planning board. Some comments came out of that. So I don't know if the board would like to have any more input on those comments and any thoughts on that? Any discussion?
I think we have the document ready. I think the board has a copy of that, and we're interested in moving forward with it, finalize it.
Correct. Steve worked on it with Stephanie. Cindy got the summary of the last meeting. The board has it now. If the board wants to entertain it, we can call for a public hearing at the next meeting, if that's what you guys want to do. And then you go through that process, get public comment, and if you adopt it, that's fine. So whatever the board wants to do, if we want to continue moving the process forward.
All right, let's we're good with that.
Well, I wanted the rest of
did
the
you-
board members to speak. I didn't want to.
I'm fine with it. That's great. Let's move forward with that, Marcus.
Okay, I got a couple of questions.
Okay, good, thank you.
But we're all waiting for it.
Okay, no problem. Thanks, I appreciate the time. Stephanie had a question on the occupancy on C. She said that she's unclear what the board wishes to say, we can keep it the same or remove it. And one of the comments that was on there said Stephanie to work differently. The question is on 2C, it says an accessory apartment shall be supported in areas of principal dwelling and shall be limited to the occupancy by a maximum of 2 persons. Do you know what the question was on? I wasn't at that meeting, and she had a question on it.
I think it was whether limiting it to the 2 people or so, for example, if someone there's 2 people and they have a baby, then it's, you know what I'm saying?
No, I
Like, so,
understand that, yeah. So does the board want to strike that or leave it in there? Because that was in the original text and it wasn't in what I had proposed, taking out. So should we tell Stephanie to leave it that way or take it out?
I don't know, the apartment is, what is the square footage, 600 square feet? It's not a large apartment, I mean.
Well,
you
you
know,
said, it, yeah.
Yeah,
So do you want to leave it in there or take it out? Or change the word?
It should be limited to 2 persons.
So we could tell her to leave it in. Right?
Mhm.
All right. But she said she was unclear what you wanted to say.
that is, it is a small, you know.
And on number 4. In use.
Mhm.
Does maintenance continued compliance and accessory apartment shall be permitted only where all structures and premises are in reasonable state of repair. What I had suggested is an accessory apartment shall be permitted only where the apartment is maintained in a reasonable state of repair and modernization. And where accessory apartment and any new construction undertaken for the accessory apartment shall be in compliance with chapter 67. The reason why I wanted that change is because I think it's rather onerous to have an entire, all structures on the property to be up to any new codes that have taken place. We don't request any of our property owners to do that. It's not required that any property owners do that. And I was told that the reason why we're allowed to do that is because it's a special permit. We don't put this onus on anybody else with a special permit. There are many things in our code that you have special permits for. We are not required to go into each structure and bring everything up to code. Today, the code could be, you have to have a shatterproof mirror. So does everybody who has a special permit need a shatterproof mirror? You know, it's rather onerous. The apartment and where the people are living are the ones that should be up to code, not the entire property.
Peter, take the mic.
Peter is our building inspector, I'd like him to comment.
Primarily, the primary structure and the accessory apartment structure have to have life safety compatible. As the up to code, carpet smoke detectors, fire issues, egress. It's not other items that the apartment has to be 100% compliant with the property. The whole structure has to be compliant with life safety. And that's carbon smoke detectors, fire doors, everything that I've inspected. It's not if they did a kitchen or they did this, you gotta change that. When they go to sell the house and we do a compliance inspection, I will find all those items. And they'll be addressed at that point, but life safety issues is what the whole spectrum for about. Accessory apartment has to get the code and the house, the primary residence, fire doors, carbon smoke detectors, things of that. The construction of the primary residence, whether work was done legally or illegally, that'll all come to light when the house gets, when the unit gets sold. Or they go to refinance. So we're not going in there trying to find every little thing in the entire structure. I've got life safety primary, covered smoke detectors, fire issues, egress. Those are the primary purposes for inspecting the rest of the residents.
But that's not what the code says. You guys changed it to say we're all structures on the premises. That's everything on the premise. That's everything on the property. You know, and I had requested that to be removed and it was put back in. I was just wondering why, because originally it was stated that if you have a special permit, you have the right to inspect everything on that property.
Yeah.
And that's not what you're doing with every special permit. So it's not fair. What's gonna happen is you're gonna have less and less people. 20 years ago, we had 35 accessory apartments. When we started cracking down on it, we ended up with 26. Now you say we have 18. What's happening is people are just saying, hey, I'm not doing it anymore.
I don't
You
think
take,
that's-
okay,
I think people just buying a home and using it for themselves and their own family. They're not looking for rental income. And they just eliminate, like I tend to eliminate, they didn't want it. They bought it, you know, they had to use it, the relative passed on, used it for their family. They didn't need it, and they didn't want it. So that's what I found.
This was agreed to by the zoning board and the planning board,
okay.
with the board sitting in the same room. If I'm right, correctly. Steve,
Yeah, it was a joint meeting as well.
I think it was.
On all the boards in the building inspector.
So, but Peter, what I'd like to say, because I think this will bring a little more light to it. So if it's the primary structure, and of course, the accessory apartment is part of that. So I understand the carbon dioxide because the detectors and the smoke detectors and everything, because if you just have it in the unit that you're renting, something still could go wrong in the main unit.
Yes.
So you would just want to make sure for the safety of everybody in the building that egress, very important if there's a fire, just very important. I know when I built one of my buildings, the fire code was a little different with the exterior doors.
Yes,
Now the requirement, I believe, has, you know, is higher for the separation from a main hallway
yes.
to the apartment itself.
Yes, but read to us.
Yes, they're rated. I think the rating is higher than,
Just as the code has changed, 15 years ago, it was a 2-hour time, and then people were reading it down. 10 years ago, it was 90-minute time, and now we're down to a 20-minute burn time. So
That's-
a solid core wood door could have a rating of 20 minutes. It doesn't have to be a steel door, it still has to have self-closing hinges. It has to be closed, and it has to have a threshold. I remember we try to eliminate as much air flow around that door thing as possible, but it has gone the other way. It's not more stringent, it's much less stringent. Which, as a builder, I'm unhappy with. I like the true fire door that had a 90-minute burn time,
sure.
but again,
The reason
you're
for
gonna
that-
be out of the house in less than 90 minutes. This is, I think, New York City is doing this. So why spend X amount of dollars on this door? You need 20 minutes. You're gonna hopefully be out of that.
Hopefully
Establish
20
it.
minutes, yeah,
You hope. But
that's kind of
staircases-
short, yeah. but-
That's primarily, and I understand, Mr. Murray, exactly what you're saying. I'm not. The wording seems as if we're going into inspect every facet of the whole establishment. Is there?
That's what I wanted to
Is there a way
remove
to
because that's what it says. That's why I wanted-
Clarify that as life safety scenario.
Well, that's what, and it says that it's life safety is the next paragraph.
Okay,
So that's what I mean. It's a little redundant,
okay,
all right? It's missing a point.
I
You
understand.
know, the life safety was 2 sentences down from that. I don't feel the entire premises should have to be brought up to code. You know what I mean? If you have a shed, if you have this, if you have that, you know, you gotta change the garage door now, you know?
I understand.
You know, people have to put plastic on their windows now because the code changed 2 years ago. Does everybody have to change their windows because the egress changed by 2 square feet, you know? You don't make everybody do that.
No, that wasn't my intent on that.
That's what the word
I
says.
see I see how you.
But apparently everybody's okay with that.
No.
On the occupancy, 2A, that should be removed as redundant because it says no more than 1 bedroom shall be permitted in any accessory apartment. It shall be limited maximum 2 people. That should be taken out because it really says it's okay if somebody's done. The biggest problem is D1B. D1B says that if you transfer ownership and the planning board rejects your application, that your tenants have to be out in 60 days. I don't think there's a landlord or a lawyer or law firm in the world that has ever been able to get a tenant out of the building in 60 days. That's not how we've operated in a village. And I don't know, that's why I had wanted that taken out. You know what? How can we enforce that? It's an unenforceable law.
But if you transfer of ownership in deed change, that, so people may not choose to have that. The tenants have.
I know, but it also says in here, if somebody dies, everybody gets kicked out in 60 days. You know, that's not fair.
If they sell and they don't sell, then we want to keep it showing them. I guess it's per event, no?
And then when somebody is selling, usually the agreement is that the tenant, that it's vacant. It's, you know,
What we have done in the past is when somebody's in contract, they get permission to act as the agent of the property owner. They come to the planning board and they ask the planning board, hey, will I be able to continue this use if I purchase this house? And we go through deliberation, you say yes.
As a family member, someone who's keeping it inside the remote ownership of the family.
No.
I think if it changes the name of the evidence.
So then they lose.
Yeah, because it was a special permit issued to that residence of those people at that time. You know, we've had several parameters of people had several family members and they had more. Another area of the house that was finished, and it was written into the verbiage that they could have that until it's sold again. I mean, as a special permit, with one or two special applications. So I think for name change, it's a special permit that those people apply for. It shouldn't just be granted and given to the property to them. That's how I feel.
Well, it'll be reviewed after a year.
Well, I think they need to come back and start the process, especially if they're new.
Okay, but the code doesn't allow them to do that. It says that you have to stay there for a year.
Originally, people first purchased property, if it wasn't a family member, they had to be there for 3 years before they can even apply for that. That's what I remember, and I was working on that, and everybody seemed to be in agreement that that should stay. I just felt that the new owner came in and they wanted to.
yeah, I think there was a discussion on 5 years and then it came down to 3 years.
It's 3 in the code since I started.
Okay.
It's 3. And I was trying to bring it down to here. A suggestion, because newer people that would come in, if they wanted to try to have the ability to have that, they can't put some. And again, whatever the reasons are, financial, family, medical, I don't know. But I believe, when I remember the meeting about the time frame discovery, the 3 years that was originally in the code, you know, so to be like, that's what we.
So if I may, if we open the public hearing, we can have this discussion at a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And so try to move on in the agenda.
Sure, go ahead. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sorry to take up your time.
Eileen is, sure. Eileen Essinger is on the planning board, plus she was at that meeting that evening. Thank you, Eileen.
What are we gonna do about lithium batteries that blow up? We're in an apartment, on one of those scooters, 7 people just died today from a lithium battery. There was an apartment building in the city, top floor, guy was repairing lithium battery operated little gadgets or whatever he was doing. Not all of these lithium batteries are URL approved. So what do you do about somebody that stays in an apartment and has a blow up of a lithium battery? I know it's far-fetched, but I'm just asking.
Well, obviously not so far fetched if that happened today.
Yeah. it
Yeah.
happened today. My other question is, does this become mute if Harcum and Hochul pass this, accessory parking lot? Do you have no?
I don't think anybody really,
jurisdiction over?
I don't think anybody really knows what's gonna happen. I know the village of Mount Kisco is issuing a similar accessory apartment law just to try to circumvent whatever may possibly happen. They feel as though if they have something on their books, at least maybe they can kind of override possibly, because nobody knows what's gonna happen.
Well,
If it happens.
she made a statement that we are in dire need of having one housing. Now, I'm gonna presume, unfortunately, that she's going to push this solar apartment piece forward as possible. So I just wanted to know, does this become null and void if we pass some kind of jurisdiction? Where do we pass laws or where do we go?
The previous draft legislation has stated that no municipality shall have the right to circumsede or to override the rules set forth by the law that was adopted. We cannot make any rules or regulations that limit the intent or direct direction of that law. That's what it said.
That's a
That's
state
what
law.
that's what the draft legislation said over the summer. Whether it has changed or not, and I doubt that it has, because there's no reason the legislature would pass a law that could be superseded by a local law. So, you know, state law is gonna, we're not allowed to make rules that circumvent or supersede the state.
You know, it'll be a mandate,
We can make it more stringent,
right?
but we can't make it right.
Okay, I want to go back to the lithium battery. One of the statements I made was that they can have a URL, whatever that word, whatever the, okay. Is when you have, I remember down at the Danish Home, if we had an extension cord, you had to prove that this had a colon. Is there any way that, and I really don't know quickly, but I don't trust these lithium batteries, they're blowing up. The vehicles need to have license plates now, or will be, it's been suggested license plates so the fire department knows if it's an electric car, maybe, so that they know how to. How minutes now? Oh, okay. I work already? Okay. But I'm just saying, can you put something? I don't know how to be able to do something that you have to prove. That it has a substantial documented approved thing.
The only thing I've seen is that everyone is recommending to charge your batteries and keep these items outside, including charging your car should be done outside.
Or there isn't some kind of bag that you can put these batteries in, but you have to take them out.
Yeah, but
There's no legislation regarding that at this point.
No, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
What's that? What, the accessory apartment?
Yeah, the accessory apartment.
But you say no lithium charging and the,
Well, I mean, these are not new houses that have these apartments shown.
okay.
These are wooden houses, they're not made of, concrete or blocks or anything of that nature. So they're going to go up quicker and it will be faster. It's just a thing feature that so, because you got a lot of young kids and they're all into all the gadgets. And parents, of course, buy them.
It's not just young kids, young adults also
young
use them.
adults.
That's it.
And big kids
Yeah, they do.
and big kids.
Yeah.
Anthony, you got one?
No, I don't have, mine's all gas powered. I like the old way.
Safer too.
So with the accessory dwelling unit law, I know a committee from the Westchester Municipal Officials Association met with Senator Harp, and I'll be able to give you more information next month. But I think they're realizing they can't go to the state, can't go to the extent that they wanted to, but I'll have all more information next month. Okay, all right, the land, the property on Blakely and corner of Blakely and 9A, the village property.
No, you got the website before
Oh,
that.
I'm sorry. Sorry about that. Skipped over that. Okay, website. So we have some information here on the website.
So the current village website isn't really user friendly. First of all, there's no search function. So I looked into some of the other municipalities, and Civic Plus, they basically cover thousands of municipalities. Some local ones are Village of Croton, City of Peekskill, Town of Yorktown. Marcus, I sent you some of the links, send it out to the other board members, but it's just a clean, crisp, the functionality of it is much better than what we currently have. So I would propose that we look into switching our current provider for our website to Civic Plus. The cost is similar. There is a slight increase after a year or two from what we're currently paying, but I think the benefits outweigh the small cost.
If I may, because it's a board decision, would it be a possibility to talk to our current web designer to see whatever improvements you want to do? We might be able to get a cheaper cost. My concern is a long-term conversion over all the data. Also, I got the stuff today. I got a list of questions. We're limited to 150 pages, for example. We're almost at 200 pages. There's additional cost for that. So before we take on a project that size, and I know how these websites work. And again, when I started here compared to other municipalities, you'll actually get a white glove service by the person that you have right now. Cindy and Sharon do not have to manipulate the website. Everything's sent to our designer. She manipulates it, configures it, put it on the website. All they have to do is send the data. So absolutely, we can, a couple of years ago, Sharon and Cindy and myself worked on improving the website. The previous website was terrible. We actually got a more interactive calendar. So, and the person we have right now was able to upgrade the website. She could have done more, but at that time, the board didn't want to spend the money. So maybe a suggestion is if you let me know, give me a list of what you want to see, we can get that over to our current website designer, see if she can manipulate it, see a cost for that. And maybe it might be a cheaper option. And also we get the benefits of not having to actually input all the information and design it, because I know people that have Civic Plus and have other web companies. And what you have to do, you have to assign, if it's a picture, you have to design it the right way. You have to put in certain spot. It takes more time to input the information onto a website. Right now, the person we have does that for us at a very cheap cost. So I'm just suggesting we can look at that first, maybe have Peggy, who does it, come to a meeting, discuss it with the board, or have a meeting with you, Steve, if you want to talk to her directly, see what you want to see and get a price from her. Also, the Village of Larchmont, because after you send the information, I actually reached out to other managers. Village of Larchmont did a whole review and actually used 6 companies, and they picked a different provider. So there are a whole bunch of other companies out there as well.
Yeah, I mean, I have no problem taking a look. I know, if you look at Civic Plus, they really, almost everybody within the area. uses them. So that was kind of my.
Absolutely. No, I know, I know a lot of people that have them as well, but they don't have the services we're currently having.
Sure.
I mean, if the person we have right now was telling that, she was closing shop and not going in and leaving, that white glove service, nobody else offers. So I would like, on behalf of Cindy and Sharon, because I work with them, it'll be beneficial to try to keep the current website and redesign it the way you would like, or whatever deficiencies you see, and we can upgrade it and get a price from that, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
How long have we had this thing? The
2010.
current,
The current the current Peggy?
Before that,
the provider we have now, how long have we had them?
trying to remember, because Gail Richards got it, so when was she on the board? I know,
Gail was elected in 2000, I think.
okay, so,
So she's been a provider since then?
no,
Okay.
yeah. probably.
Yeah. And I'm not speaking behalf of Cindy and Sharon. They're the ones who work on the website. If you want to ask them how they feel about. the
I mean, as
current
long as
design.
she's open to updating it the way we want to update it.
I would think
don't see
so.
a problem.
If it's,
Discussion with her.
yeah, I'll give you her contact information. Definitely feel free to give her a call. If it's outside her wheelhouse, then we can look at different options.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that's the only, the benefit with going with somebody like this, they do it all over. They do it for villages our size, they do it for cities, with a million people.
Yeah,
So
the difference that I see is other municipalities have bigger staffing, and they have different departments that actually update their individual pages. Never in IT, I mean, for example, town of Yorktown.
They also service municipalities our size. It's
Okay.
small.
All right,
So
yeah, but you gotta have the time, to do it. I'm just trying to say
No, I
that it's just, if you look at what they do versus us just sending the information to Peggy, is a much difference in that process.
Yeah.
So
And we're on a first name basis.
absolutely.
You know,
Peggy,
we're better than
Yeah.
that.
And she's been available every time you guys
Every
need her,
time,
right?
yeah.
So
Doesn't make you call her Margaret. She's back.
that's Peggy, exactly.
And I'd like Sharon and Cindy's input on that too, since they're on the front line, what their thoughts are.
I mean,
Oh.
my first question is, how much is it really gonna cost to start the website?
Mhm.
$10,000 or whatever? I mean, it's not, they're not just gonna pick it up and,
No, it's the 2,400.
for them to start the whole website.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Who's migrating, everything over is
Right.
limited to, the amount of data that they bring over.
Right.
But it adds a search function, which we don't have. They catalog everything. All our meeting minutes or anything else we have on there, which is beneficial.
Mhm.
Um,
Okay, and like Marcus said, right now, we want to put up the minutes. I just attach it to an email to Peggy and then it's done.
Yeah, it would
But
be,
this, we're gonna have to learn how to,
it would be a little different process. They would have to show you how, you would just drop it into a form and then it would go onto the website directly instead of reaching out to.
I looked at them today, the ones that you sent, they all look very similar.
They do.
So I mean, ours is at least unique.
Mhm.
Sharon, do you want to say anything? Come up to the mic. I'm gonna put it on camera.
Don't do that to her.
There you go. That way her daughter can see her tonight.
I don't know if you guys saw the website before you were on the board.
Yes.
It was horrible.
Mhm.
And we got together with Peggy and she showed us two different ways. And the cost was $1,000 versus like $10,000 for, and it was full, the $10,000 one, but we were gonna spend that on much of the residents' money.
Still, from a user standpoint, I mean, to find the agenda, you have to, there's about 7 different drop down menus. So there's just things like that that maybe we could just clean up and continue to use Peggy. That's,
Yeah.
you know, that's fine, but,
Absolutely.
you know, I think it's worth the discussion.
If she put the search engine in, that would, but once you go to it a couple times, you just know where to go.
Right,
Right,
Like anything
Finally
else.
figured it out.
yeah.
And would they give us training?
yes.
Because they know what it's like.
And then in reality, how many people really look at the website?
How many
Sorry
people
to
look at the
say.
newsletter? Good questions.
We know that
Good
answer.
questions.
I look at that.
Steve, I'll send you her contact information. Give her a call, absolutely.
Too.
They
Right,
don't
yeah.
get anything.
That's true.
Oh, okay. You have to open it up and fold it. Open it up.
All right, well, if you want to talk or whatever, we'll talk to Peggy and we'll see. What we can do.
Okay, now we're moving on to the property on Blakely and 9A, the village owned property. Marcus?
So I actually got an additional appraisal and additional surveys, which is in everybody's packet. So again, this only is a village book. I gotta control the screen too. Hold on a
Okay.
second. Let me
Put
zoom
it
my,
on you now, Marcus.
let me just zoom out a little bit since I'm the cameraman tonight too.
Did a good job.
So I gave you a couple of proposals. The first thing is, like we discussed, the village board wants to move forward on this. So we got another proposal for the appraisal. Right now, I got 3 proposals, one for 3,000, one for 3,200, and one for 4,500 for the appraisal. For the survey, we got 2 proposals, one the original, which was $4,000, 4,500. And I got a new one for 1,800 plus the markings for 2,700. That was for it was just the survey was 1,800. If you want the spikes,
Yeah,
the
the
markings,
stakes and
it'll
the-
be 2,700 in total. So it's 2,700 versus 4,500.
So did the 4,500 include the stakes?
Correct,
And include the metal also, not just the wooden
correct,
stakes? Okay.
correct. So again, it's only proposals to do, and like I said, it's open, there's no rush. If there's other proposals or anybody else, you can let me know. I'm just trying to give you an update since I'm keep on reaching out, trying to get more people to see if they give us a proposal. And like I said, that's only if you guys want to move forward. If you don't want to do it, that's fine with me too. That's what you, whatever you want to do. Because I actually, Joe LaPolis keeps calling me and say, do you want me to continue doing this? Let me know what you want to do. What we need to get in appraisals, we knew what the price might be, then we might want to offer it at first. So that's what we are. So whatever you guys want to do. Give me more names, I can reach out.
No, I never reached out, so, but that is definitely a better price. Than the
Yeah,
original price,
yeah, it was,
which is good.
absolutely.
I mean, you have to make the investment if you want to sell the property.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what I see.
And this one, actually got it from Peter, so if anybody has any other suggestions on either a survey or appraisal, let me know. I might be able to get one, I got one more person for another survey. I'm gonna send the information tomorrow and see if I can get another proposal from him as well.
Okay.
Okay? All right, keep you updated, see any new
Yeah.
information.
Can we have a resolution at the next meeting to accept the terms and conditions of that proposal?
Well, let me
So we
get,
can move forward?
what I'm gonna do, let me see if I get another proposal for the survey. That will get, you get another proposal. If you want, if the board wants it, we can put on the agenda to approve one and you guys can make a decision, whatever you guys want to do.
All right, we have until the next meeting yet too, so Marcus could send us the information. We
Yeah,
have to
so
add it
you-
to the agenda.
Just put together, we can put together a resolution that we're gonna accept that, and we have to accept the appraisal.
Correct.
The consultant fees for the appraisal,
Correct.
and we don't have any issue with that one appraiser, right? Or is it?
No, no,
Okay, so
no,
we can have a resolution for the appraiser, and you can put together a resolution for the
survey.
survey. We'll have multiple people, and we can pick.
Yes, you can pick whoever you want.
So as long as we have it on the next agenda, we can move forward.
Yep, that's up to- yep. Okay,
Alrighty, license agreement for, on White Street.
Yep,
Village
give
lands?
you an update. Stephanie received a draft license agreement from the lawyer for the property owner who's adjacent to the village property. She's reviewing it. There was some discussion about potentially having insurance every year. So once Justin, I haven't talked to the property owner about this yet, but we actually reached out to our insurance company. They said, well, is the village going to make this long-term? Is the village willing to sell that piece of property to them? And then they have to worry about providing insurance, reviewing their insurance, and making sure that that property owner maintains their insurance. And then we talked about the last meeting, possibly make it forever, whoever owns the property, and they won't have to deal with new property owners, so on and so forth. So the idea would be if the board wants to consider selling the property, of course, I have to approach the property owner to pay for the appraisal. We have a survey. We know how much the land is, how much.
How big is the parcel? I mean,
It's
it's
for
like
2 cars.
a
It's for 2
postage
cars.
stamp.
Yes, 2 cars. So
Like
we,
that.
but we cannot sell property without an appraisal.
Well, absolutely.
So we can do an appraisal if the village wants to sell the property, if the village wants to get rid of this little piece of land which that property owner is using, get an appraisal, see if they are willing to pay for that price versus have to take insurance every year. So that's an option I wanted to bring up to the board for discussion.
My only concern, I don't know if there's any other properties in the village that would be, I just don't want to open a Pandora box.
Mhm.
I don't want to be selling little 5 by 10 pieces of property all over the village. I don't know. That's just my opinion.
If I was you, why wouldn't you want to get rid of it and get it off the village hands?
Yes, I'll fit.
Yeah,
I'd be responsible.
and you make it final.
And how much could it be?
Yeah.
Maybe it's $500.
Yeah.
Like, we're not looking like we're.
We're not talking about a lot of money.
$7,000.
We're not talking about a lot of money, so,
I'm not familiar with the process of selling public land.
yes.
So no matter how small or how large it is public land.
Right.
So there has to be some kind of legal process.
No, good point.
I've never even heard of it. I don't
That's
know.
the same thing we're doing with the we just talked about the appraisal. But same thing we're doing with the property off on Blakely Avenue. As long as you get an appraisal, you put an arm's length transaction for the appraised value. If you're getting the full value for your property, that's allowed on the state. law.
Yeah, but we're sending it out to the public. So that land, we're gonna appraise, we're gonna put it up for sale and anybody can buy it.
Correct,
We're postulating, saying, okay, here's some public land, would you like to buy it?
correct.
To one person. So
No, you,
I don't have an issue with
Right.
it, but legally, I think it might be something a little nutty. You
We'll have to
know,
ask Steph.
because we did entertain this when we talked about paper streets and easements.
correct.
And there was a big issue with that, and the paper streets ended up staying paper streets. People still use them. They don't have insurance on them. in
Right.
People's backyards.
Correct.
And there was an issue where I believe the way this land was, public land was to be transferred to private ownership.
Mhm.
And not everybody of the public being able to be afforded the opportunity.
Right, just a little, we discussed it with Stephanie already. She couldn't make it tonight,
Okay.
but she said, and we both agree, as long as you get the appraised value, you put it out there. I don't know who else wants to buy that little piece of property, and then you get for the, just like we're gonna do what the Blakely Avenue. Like it's the good part of it, we would have a survey, or we gotta get an appraisal. The appraisal might say it's worth $200. You get $200, you get rid of it, and you don't have to worry about insurance or talking property owner.
Sounds great. as long as it's legal.
Absolutely. We'll and I definitely will double check that with Stephanie,
We
yeah.
have to do a public hearing perhaps? 'Cause
No.
this is village
Well, you have to adopt it at you have to accept the sale at a public meeting, absolutely.
Well, yeah, no, I'm
Yes.
not saying that, but I just didn't know if there had to be public hearing
No public hearing,
involved. in
no.
Selling. village
So if that's
property.
something the board is willing to do, I can reach out to the property owner and see if she's willing to, she will have to pay for their appraisal and willing to buy the property, but I think long-term is better for them, so then we have to worry about buying insurance and having to renew insurance every year. And we have to stay on
Increase
top of
their
it.
assessed value.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, but now she got 2 parking spaces. Absolutely.
Would that have to be surveyed as well, too?
Yeah, we have the survey already.
Oh, you do, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she'd be on the hook for that as well. but-
Correct. She already paid for that. Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
All right, good.
Okay, if that's okay, I'll reach out to them and get back to the board. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so, update on boiler replacement. Marcus, we've been working on replacing the boiler here, which I don't even want to tell you how many years old it is.
Yes.
How much bubble gum is attached to it, and, so it's time for a new one, and, we have money in our capital fund that we were, it was, money that we had negotiated in the end with Entergy, so we set that extra money aside, put into capital.
Correct.
To the capital fund.
Correct.
So we had the money to replace it, and I see you've come up with some estimates here and.
Yeah, so just to give the board an update, we just opened up the bids yesterday. Cindy opened the bids yesterday. I want to give you the information as soon as possible. Our village engineer has not had time to review the bids or talk to the contractor as of yet, but I want to make sure you guys have the most current information. We've seen what I consider, I also the engineer consider a very high bid. The lowest bid was $214,000. Much more than we originally expected to see. So he's reviewing it. He's going to hold to the contractor and see where the numbers are coming from and determine if that's a good price. Both based on current conditions and what we are right now, prevailing wage and everything else. His recommendation might be, after talking to him as a board, to reject all the bids and maybe reconfigure the bid, because he was doing a high efficiency boiler. Again, he's going to explain this, not me. Maybe somebody else on the board understands this better than I would, but he did a high efficiency boiler, trying to get a boiler that's at the most highest efficiency. He said we go to a conventional boiler that we might see $100,000 difference in price, but he needs to determine that as well. So he needs time before the next board meeting, give a memo. If that's true, but he's going to talk to all the contractors. If that's true, he's going to recommend to reject the bids, and then we can rebid it in a month or so.
So, I'm not sure if he's gonna have, oh, well, George would know, I'm not sure if he's gonna have this done before the January 3rd meeting.
No, Edison, we have a different engineer for this. We have
Oh.
Edison. Yeah, he's gonna try to get a memo for the January 3rd meeting, so that way we can reject the bids and tell the contractors, thank you, but we're gonna maybe revisit this
I
again.
misunderstood, I'm sorry.
No, no problem. We have a separate engineer for that, because George does not do heating and air conditioning.
So, okay, as we're talking about Con Edison, where are we with them, with the repaving? Are we
Springtime.
just- Yeah,
Spring.
thank you, because we're out of the. yeah,
Yes,
It's too chilly willy now.
yeah,
But that'll work out well.
yeah. All I wanted was the valve to be put in the grass.
Yeah,
And
no,
thank God
thank
we got that out of
That
them.
was done, good.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, so that's the update. We'll have more for the next meeting.
Wonderful, all right, good. All right, good. Everything else is for the meeting. Okay, does anyone have any other board members have any comments or questions or anything else they'd like to discuss? John, have any?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Last meeting, we talked about the bill we had for respirators, and we talked about the respiratory protection program. Did you get a chance to review 1910-134?
No, I actually reached out to our workers' compensation company and they say, yes, he needs the physical. So we're gonna work on that and get he's got fit tested, but didn't get a physical.
Yeah,
So
you're
we'll get
supposed to have the physical before the test to see if you're capable
Mhm.
of wearing it, and based on that.
No, I'm glad you brought that up. It's interesting. It was never done before, so I'm glad you brought it up. So we'll make sure we get it
Yeah.
done.
134 also talks about the minimum training for hazard recognition and understanding the limitations and use of your SCBA, because you're gonna be an IDLH, so you should know how to identify what the IDLH is and what the limitations of your respiratory protection are.
That's
So,
good. Our workers' compensation, will sit down and do their proper training and actually get the training done, and then we'll get a physical done at the same time.
And you can also
Good
carry
catch.
it on to the people who go into the confined spaces,
Correct.
you know, they have hazard awareness, so they could all be rolled into one.
Absolutely. Yes.
And one other thing, I remember
Second, IDLH.
IDLH, immediately dangerous to live in.
Okay, good, thank you.
Also, I remember over the summer, we brought a lot of stuff in, there's still a lot of stuff in the, historical. Is there any time frame we're gonna move anything, because you really can't move around it, all the stuff that's in historical.
Oh, yeah. We can move some of that stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Copious enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mostly chairs, right?
A lot of
Lot of
chairs.
chairs.
a bunch of
Because we
boxes
didn't
and
put as
stuff.
many chairs here because of COVID. That's.
We
why.
could throw some more.
Really
So we
good
could put
chairs.
more here now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll talk DPW, we can move
Yeah.
stuff around. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, that's all the questions I have.
Okay, thank you, Steve.
The only question I had, Mayor, I know, I think it was about a year ago, you had formed a recreation committee, and I'm not sure who the members were, but as a
I'll get
liaison,
that
I
to
was
you.
just wondering if you can give me that information.
Yes.
so we can, get
We'll
that
be
going.
starting in January. It's just been a lot of different things because also know that according to our code, there are recreation fees that we can charge for developers. So going forward. So I'd like their input on, because there's a lot of, younger people on there and, what their thoughts are. That the village needs for recreational. Dan, what do you got? Nothing? Okay, all right, you're good tonight. Trustee Capricotti, what do you have tonight?
Not much, just, wish everybody a Merry Christmas, that's all.
Marcus, anything for executive session?
I don't have anything, but I wanted to note the video for the tree lighting is up. It was very nice. So, people say, everybody had a nice little speech. And it was a very nice video. So people should take a look at it. The crowd was really nice that you were able to see. So
People are making fun of my singing.
That's like our best event of the year.
but it was nice. The video was
It was
very
very
nice.
nice. It was
Yeah,
very nice.
yes.
Well put together.
And, thanks to Nancy, our recreation supervisor, and the beautification committee, and everybody that just participates. It's a very big community event. So thank you, everyone. It's been a busy year. So sure, Wills, come on.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You wanted to bring
Sorry.
something up. Yes.
Well, I'm just here to ask you about the conversation we had about the, for our upcoming election at the firehouse. We do have an election coming in January 12th. We have to get the approval of the board to allow the people that have been nominated to be on that ballot. We're really trying to get our, absentee ballots and working people are going to circle with the holidays. So that's what we need to.
I'm sorry. I forgot to bring that up. Yeah.
That's executive session, but probably, I guess.
Only if there's any objection. If there's no objection, we can move forward. There is an objection to the nominees. We should go into executive session.
Pushing for that.
I didn't have any objections. I think the training requirements were met for the people that are running, so that's that's my only concern, that they're able to do that.
I have no objection. Dan, you are a liaison. Have
I
you?
have no objections. I spoke to Bobby at night. I have no objection for nominations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for bringing that up. Yeah.
We move forward on our elections. Thank you.
All right, thanks for reminding us.
Thanks, Bob.
So one more question, does that have to be done by a resolution at the meeting Tuesday?
We have to, let's look at the agreement and see if it has to be by resolution or just see if they're raising an objection. I'll get back to you tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anyone in the audience, any other comments from the audience? Eileen. Okay, Merry Christmas. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, did anybody want to go into executive session to discuss the IMA? And what the next steps of the IMA would be?
Up to the board, are you ready to do that?
Stephanie's not here, so I don't know if you need Stephanie help for that.
'Cause I'm sure she has some input too.
I mean, there's a lot of things I'd like to speak about, but, without Stephanie here, I don't know if we're gonna be productive.
Okay.
But we do have to go into executive session for what Bobby just brought up, correct?
No, there was no objection, so that's fine.
There's opposition.
So you're fine.
So we'll do an executive session with the IMA on after the January 3rd.
So January 3rd meeting, okay.
So Merry Christmas, everyone. And I'd like to make a motion to close the meeting. Can I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Uh,
Thank you.